This video contains spoilers for the featured film. All images used belong to their respective copyright owners and are used here for commentary and criticism purposes only. Please remember that statements made are my own opinion and you are free to disagree in the comments, but please do so respectfully. Hey there, Alley Cats, and welcome back to Movie Monday. Today, we're going to be following up a video about a pretty good superhero movie that does everything they can to do right by the fans, with one that is fairly terrible and spits right in the faces of their fans. Yes, I am redoing one of the most polarizing reviews I did back in the day, which was for Suicide Squad, a 2016 superhero film, but using the term superhero very loosely. Before I get into this review, I want to remind everyone that I'm going to be very honest about my opinion, obviously, and not sugarcoat how I feel about this or any other movie. But I'd like to ask all fanboys and girls to please hold off on the torches and pitchforks and keep an open mind when going into this video. Also, this was originally going to be the first video for the return of Movie Monday before I decided to change it to Avengers Endgame, and I'd started writing out scripts months in advance, so this one was written before I'd fully decided to have the reviews split into 3 different sections. So that's why it will be a bit different from other videos. If you'd like to skip the plot overview and get right into my thoughts of the movie, then you can skip to this timestamp in the video. So with that said, let's get right into it. Right away, within the first 15 minutes, I already have problems with this movie. They introduce each character with narration from Amanda Waller as she's trying to convince government officials to put this squad together, flashbacks, on-screen text, and flashy graphics with out-of-place pop culture songs make the first part a huge mess and very jarring with the sudden cut from one person to the next. On the plus side, I did like that they included Batman and The Flash, even though their appearances were rather brief, just because it makes sense that, of course, they'd be involved with capturing the bad guys in the first place. You can definitely tell by the intro who they're mainly focusing on with this film when only Deadshot and Harley Quinn get the most backstory with, for some reason, 2 introductions each, when the others barely get a minute of exposition. Also, I missed this on my first viewing a couple years ago, but while rewatching the movie for this video, I did notice there's a bit of text during Harley Quinn's intro that says, "Accomplice in the murder of Robin." Like, what? You can't just gloss over something like that, especially when it's not something we even see in any of the movies. The final recruit for the squad is a mystical being known as the Enchantress, and the explanation of how Amanda obtained Enchantress's heart to have control over her is very vague and rushed. And it sort of amounts to, we went to this place and got the thing. Though it's still not as bad as Dr. Moon, the one possessed by Enchantress, because she, as a professional archaeologist, goes to this hidden temple place and immediately breaks open the first artifact she finds, resulting in her being taken over by this demon witch. The girl kinda deserved it at that point, I'm just saying. Speaking of Dr. Moon, her relationship with Rick Flag, the army guy, is the most forced relationship I have ever seen, and it makes me uncomfortable just to watch them interact with each other. It's done only for plot convenience, and it's just not good. This is all still being explained through narration, one of the laziest storytelling tools, and I don't understand why Enchantress, who can teleport anywhere in an instant, can't just grab her own heart from Amanda and get the heck out of there. It's a very poor choice to make her the antagonist in the first place. It doesn't make any sense because in the comics, she is part of the Suicide Squad and she works with them. Instead, they give her some vague, "I'll make a machine and take over the world" plan, and decided that's good enough. I especially don't understand why when the squad is being assembled, they didn't tell the squad about Enchantress in the first place. Like they couldn't do what they were supposed to if they knew what was actually going on, since their original mission was just to rescue Amanda, who was stuck in the city while Enchantress was making an army of black bubble monsters. But they aren't even told that either. There was no reason to withhold this information aside from causing pointless drama later on in the movie when they inevitably find out. Then just before they leave for the mission, which no details are given for, they randomly bring in Slipknot, a new character into the squad we hadn't seen before. And it was painfully obvious he was a disposable character because he didn't even get a fancy introduction at the beginning, and we barely got any explanation of him or his abilities besides, He can climb anything. Damn, guys, take it easy. Don't bog yourself down with exposition there. Not only was he clearly nothing more than a walking plot device, but that means it didn't even matter when he died just 10 minutes later to the explosive chips all the squad members had implanted in their necks in case they act out. He's brought in and killed minutes later, literally just to prove a point and show that, yep, those bombs in their necks actually work and will kill them. And for a movie that should have had a significant amount of violence and gore with everything that was going on, there was barely any, mainly because most of the bad guys were faceless, copy-pasted monsters that crumbled like rocks when shot or stabbed. When we do see Enchantress transforming people into her bubble rock army dudes, she kisses them in order to do so, but this seems very counterproductive because she has so many, and just thinking about her having to kiss so many people is just ew. Has she never heard of herpes? But the most frustrating part for me for this entire movie is when they finally reach their destination and surprise, it's revealed they were sent to rescue Amanda this whole time. Still not sure why we couldn't know that sooner because it has zero impact on the plot. But Amanda suddenly turns into a super baddie and starts shooting her entire staff out of nowhere. Her reasoning is that they aren't cleared for this sort of thing, but it doesn't make sense and opens a lot of questions that never get answered. Why was she here? Who were they? And why were they here if they weren't cleared for it? What's the point of all this? It was done only so there could be someone morally worse than the villains in the Suicide Squad so they can be viewed as actual good guys instead of anti-heroes as they're supposed to be. This part annoyed me so much when I first saw the movie, and it still does now. However, on the opposite side of the spectrum, right after this is my favorite scene of the movie when Joker rescues Harley, and the following bit when Deadshot is ordered to shoot her, but he, quote-unquote, misses. All the good characters are involved in this scene, so they are, of course, spectacular, and the music for once is actually great and really packs a punch. Though sadly, it just has me longing for a likely much better movie that revolves around Harley Quinn and the Joker. But as great as this scene is, it gets immediately ruined with the Joker death fake out. It's incredibly stupid because obviously they hyped up the Joker so much there's no way they would kill him off already. And my immediate thought seeing this for the first time in the theater was, alright, how long do we have to wait until he makes his grand re-entrance? Harley at this point also has her neck implant disabled and the others assume she's dead, but then she decides to wait around for them and joins back up with the squad to eventually end up in prison again? She was free! Even if she was depressed because she thought Joker was dead, anywhere would have been better than going back to jail. The screenwriters also seem to forget from here on out that her implant has been disabled, and it makes me want to just smack my head against a wall repeatedly. At this point, they aren't sure what to do, but Flag comes in with letters that Deadshot's daughter wrote to him because of course he's just happens to carry those around with him, and this conveniently gives Deadshot the motivation to go after Enchantress and finally finish this, so the others decide to tag along because reasons, I guess. The last fight is so unbelievably bad and messy. There's so much smoke during most of the action that obscures the majority of the fighting, and then there's the super drawn out slow motion that ruins the tension and only succeeds in making me wish the movie would just freaking end already. Unfortunately, it does, shortly after when they're all back in the prison and the Joker makes his completely expected and unsurprising re-entrance and breaks Harley out of jail. Here's the thing, you guys. In terms of original characters and stories, I actually prefer DC to Marvel. I think they have better villains, and most of the origin stories of many of these characters just fascinate me a bit more than Marvel does. So I was really looking forward to this movie when the first trailer was released, especially since there's several characters in this movie that haven't been portrayed in live action before. Deadshot and Harley Quinn obviously were the best characters of the movie, being played by acting titans Will Smith and Margot Robbie respectively. El Diablo was a fairly good character as well, though I didn't like how he was just going around throwing himself a pity party for most of the movie, and I also felt it was very unnecessary for him to die in the final fight. The Joker was pretty okay, although I prefer Heath Ledger's Joker, but it's practically two different versions of the Joker, and this one works really well alongside Harley Quinn, which is almost a shame because of just how little he was in the movie. I felt this was massively wasted potential, and he only had about 8 minutes of screen time. I think someone actually timed it. It was like they put just enough to include include some of his more epic moments in the trailer and get people hyped about him. Even Viola Davis was good for what she was given, but her talents were really put to waste in this movie, and her character was such a mess. Killer Croc is also severely underused in this movie. He's one of my favorite villains from the DC universe, though that may at least be partially thanks to the Arkham games, but I wish he'd been more than essentially a background character. Captain Boomerang was equally pointless, acting only as comic relief, though Jai Courtney did an okay job, probably the best performance of his career, but that isn't really saying much. Yet another useless character, Katana. She doesn't even do anything besides kill some faceless monsters, look menacing on occasion, and talk to her sword. That's literally it. Her character could have been replaced by a houseplant, and it would have made absolutely no difference. Speaking of completely unnecessary, Enchantress's brother Incubus. He only adds to the ever-expanding and muddled cast of characters and detracts from Enchantress as an antagonist. And he's essentially nothing more than a souped-up henchman. The majority of the characters in this movie are so poorly written, completely unneeded, or both, and it's so disappointing because they had such good source material to work with. And this was a movie so many people wanted, including myself, especially after the disaster that was Batman vs. Superman earlier that year. There's so many plot holes that don't make sense just within the first 20 minutes, and it doesn't get better as the movie goes on. Some movies that are terrible on a critical level can still be enjoyable to some people, but Suicide Squad just doesn't work for me because there are way too many issues to get past as a result of lazy and/or rushed writing, since apparently they only had about 6 weeks to write the entire script to begin with. I understand wanting some comic relief, but it happens so often at the completely wrong moments. It ends up ruining so much of the movie. Yes, it's a comic book movie, but there is such a thing as going overboard. I am looking at you, Batman and Robin. Especially for the tone of this movie, which seems to flip-flop between dark, serious action and campy superhero movie. Just pick one and stick with it. The excessive, out-of-place top 40 songs peppered throughout that take away from the intensity and seriousness of the movie also aren't doing them any favors, which is unfortunate because probably half their budget was spent on the damn soundtrack. And it's just extra insulting to fans of the comic books because they seem to have a hard time even sticking with the source material at several points. The story is just so incredibly bad and predictable, and it seems more focused on pandering to preteens who would be happy with just watching a bunch of explosives and Margot Robbie running around in a skimpy outfit. I know a lot of people like this movie as it is, and that's cool. I have no problems with that if other people enjoy it. But personally, I feel like it's a steaming pile of garbage that's poorly written and poorly edited and could have used a lot of changes. First off, the character introductions with the flashy graphics and text that get crammed into the first 15 minutes of the movie, get rid of those completely. Apparently, they had brought in an editing team after the fact to sort of polish what they had, and it's clear all the neon graphics and whatnot were an afterthought to give more of a comic feel to an otherwise dark movie. Instead, introduce the characters as the movie goes on and let the audience figure out their abilities and personalities for themselves. It's a very bad habit for filmmakers to treat audiences like idiots that need to be spoon-fed character information, like we aren't smart enough to figure things out for ourselves. Don't ever underestimate the audience. And this way, it also drastically helps with the pacing of the movie. There's another moment like this towards the end when they're fighting Enchantress and Harley cuts her heart out, which we know is her biggest weakness, and she's not as strong without her heart. This has been thoroughly established and demonstrated to us many times throughout the movie. And Flag, instead of immediately jumping into action, turns to Deadshot and says, "Her heart is out! We can end this!" Like, we know, so do something about it instead of spouting off unneeded lines right in the middle of combat. Cut that shit out entirely. Again, it's severely underestimating the intelligence of the audience to the point where it's practically insulting. And that line itself is so out of place, it throws off the whole climax of the movie because it suddenly halts the action. Also, as much as I'd prefer they extend the movie to give more characters an appropriate amount of screen time, since it does appear that the first draft of this film was 4 or 5 hours long and had to be condensed so the tone and pacing is all over the place, it seems more beneficial overall to instead cut the unnecessary characters from the cast who are just wasted space and leave Deadshot, Harley Quinn, Enchantress, and El Diablo. Maybe also Killer Croc just because I like him and think he could have done a lot more than he actually did in this movie. But since they clearly can't pull off a big cast like Marvel does, there definitely needs to be some downsizing since the cast is too muddled with throwaway, unimportant characters who seem to be just an afterthought. And this way we could have more fleshed out characters with some actual personality and development. I also specifically mentioned Enchantress as part of the squad because she needs to fight with the squad as she's supposed to. There needs to be a whole new antagonist and conflict, though I'm not sure exactly what they could do. That's the screenwriter's job, but at this point, nearly anything could be better. And especially don't force Amanda to be a worse bad guy than the squad. Having some questionable morals is all well and good, but trying to paint the Suicide Squad as the angelic good guys of the movie is a big no-no and completely misses the whole point. And they seem far too intent on keeping that PG-13 rating, cutting away from the more graphic scenes and having lesser violence in general. What they should have done is go all out with an R rating to give Deadpool, a far superior movie, a run for its money and let the squad be the true villains they really are. I think that's pretty much everything I have to say about Suicide Squad. There's a ton more smaller points and continuity issues I could harp on, but that would make the video 2 or 3 times its size, so I'll just give Suicide Squad my personal rating of 3 out of 10 and leave it at that. So I never have to deal with this movie again, at least until Suicide Squad 2 comes out. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below, and if you have any suggestions for movies I should discuss and review in the future. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and subscribe if you have not already. And until next time, I will see you guys later. Bye!